Well, Mark Twain said the two greatest days of your life are the day you're born, the day you figure out why. And there's kind of some homespun wisdom from Mark Twain, and it kind of does really apply, doesn't it? The day you're born, the day you can figure out why you were born. Jim Elliot, a martyred missionary, wherever you are in life, be all there, right? Live everything you believe to be the will of God, he said, just live it to the hilt. And I started worship today telling you guys that I want us to begin to think about life and about how we're living and what we're doing in the world in which we're living in, because you know, have you guys noticed that, like, every so often you'll find these life statements from people, and so much wisdom that's been accumulated among people throughout all over the world, all over the place. Max Lucado, life consists in finding your sweet spot, the place where you were meant to be. Chris Martin from Coldplay, life has a beautiful, crazy design. And it's true. There's nothing quite like it. The point of your life, Francis Chan says, the point of your life is to point to Him. And it just kind of summarizes ever practical John Wesley. Do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, in all the times you can, to all the people you can, for as long as you can. Right? Ever practical. And I don't know if you guys are walking around today with a life statement. And like, if you could summarize it all, what would it look like? And, you know, that's how you kind of live your life. And, you know, I think I could also safely say to you that life is just the most amazing. It's a bizarre design. Chris Martin's right. It's a bizarre design. And it's just so remarkable. And it's fun. Y'all, come on. Okay, I told you this is not our traditional sermon. I'm going to require a little feedback today. How many of you think it's kind of fun to be alive? It's fun, isn't it? And the designs of life are remarkable. And how many of you look back over your life sometimes and think to yourself, well, I had hard times, had good times. I had things that worked out, things that didn't work out. But boy, I sure had a lot of nice serendipities, a lot of nice surprises in my life. Haven't you guys had that in your life? You know, I playfully told Marcia not too long ago, I said, baby, you're one of the best surprises that ever happened to me. Quit buttering me up. But you guys just don't understand what it's like to live with somebody who's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed 24/7. What a surprise. What a joy. And yet we all understand that life can get really hard. Chuck Swindoll said life is a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And he's so spot on when he says that. Or Max Lucado's words, God never said the journey'd be easy, but He did say the arrival would be worthwhile. And, you know, you just, gosh, there's such a goodness to life, and there's such a quality of life that God has blessed us with. And that's the reason why I started in John 10:10 with Him just simply saying, Jesus saying to us, I really have come to give you life, but it's a life that's so extraordinary. And so whether you get emotional about it or whether you even stay awake and give me any kind of oomph response, I want everybody here to understand that this life that we're living is just remarkable. It's amazing. And what's interesting is that Solomon, in all of his wisdom, Solomon reminds us about Solomon had the extraordinary ability to simplify life. How many of you think Solomon's had a few more life experiences than you have? You guys ever, how many of you have ever read closely the book of Ecclesiastes? How many of you think that Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived? Probably so. How many of you also think Solomon was nuts? Yeah. How many of you think Solomon probably how many of you think Solomon lived life to excess? Yes. He did. Clearly he did. But one of the interesting things about Solomon was, for all of this living that Solomon did, when he came back around near the end of his life and boiled it all down, he really simplified it and really laid it out for you about what life should what it should be about. And I want to suggest something to you today. I want to suggest to you a concept that I want to be talking about off and on in the months ahead, and that is that secular people are having a very difficult time navigating life. And they're having a very hard way to go trying to make sense out of life and trying to know how to make it happen. And you know what's interesting? You guys remember years ago the famous book was written, I'm Okay and You're Okay? Remember that famous book, I'm Okay, You're Okay? And of course it begs the thing, if I'm okay and you're okay, how come nobody's okay? And isn't it interesting, for all the wealth that we have and for all the education that we have and for all of the life experiences and for all the technology that we have and for how life has radically improved, how come nobody can figure it out? And how come the world stumbles around aimlessly trying to find happiness? And how come it is that everybody, and maybe it's just me who feels this way, how come everybody seems mad now? And how come everybody, it seems like every little event in life is a matter of life and death? Have you guys noticed this now? That if you meet somebody who disagrees with you now, you can't politely disagree. It becomes a hand-to-hand combat, life and death issue. And if it's so easy to figure out, how come we've divided the world into camps? By the way, is everybody here aware of what camp you're supposed to be in? Again, this is not going to cut it today. It's not going to cut it. Because we live in a society where everybody has decided that if you're going to live your life, the only adequate way to live your life is to find your group and to find your belief system and to find how you're going to approach life. And if you don't pick the right one and you don't do things the right way, well, you're just living life all wrong. And then along comes Solomon. And Solomon simplifies life. And I need to move along because I'll be honest with you, I've got a lot of information kind of running around in my spirit and in my head and in my heart because I've been reading and thinking about this for months now, trying to figure out as a believer how I'm going to live in a world that just doesn't even understand the concept of living. And yet we have Solomon who graciously simplifies it. You guys want to look at Solomon for just a minute? And you guys want to see some common sense living? Here it is. Solomon's got 2 points, and they go something like this. You better spend your life looking around, and you better spend your life looking up. That's it. If I could summarize the book of Ecclesiastes, that would be it. You better spend your life looking around, and you better spend your life looking up. How many of you can remember that this week? I hope you can, because it's just that simple. Because here's what Solomon does. Solomon says, look, I want to invite you to live boldly, confidently in a world where you're not sure how things are going to turn out. Which, by the way, does anybody here have the corner on a complete understanding of how things are going to go this week? No, absolutely not. In fact, one of the things that always bothers me when I come to worship is I can see your wheels into Wednesday. I can see your wheels turning, and I can see you already worrying about stuff that's coming up on Wednesday, and it's etched on your face some Sundays. And you got no control over it. And you don't know. And neither do I. I guess I'm not any different from you, but Solomon says, look, let's get into life and live boldly. Kind of let the chips fall where they fall. Live fearlessly in a world that you can't control and you don't always understand. And the fact that I don't understand it doesn't mean I shouldn't live in it and I shouldn't participate in it. So we're going to talk about your living, and here's what he says. Look, I need for you to every so often stop and look around you and see what's happening. And so what does he say? He starts by saying this. And keep in mind, this is kind of like wisdom. This is just like, this is like him giving you tidbits of information to apply to your life. And here's what he starts by saying. Send your grain across the seas, and in time, profits will flow back to you. And what is he saying? Well, he's saying, look, while you're living, you can send your grain across the sea. You can put it on a ship and sell it away and make some money. Or, you know what the flip side of that is? You can keep all your grain, not try to sell any of it, and make bread and live a boring life. But here's the idea. What Solomon's saying is look, you can either participate in life or you can go hide. You can get in a shell and not try anything. No, send it across the sea. And then he wrote, in verse 2, he reminds you of another really simple way to live your life. Look at verse 2. But divide your investments among many places, for you don't know what risks might lie ahead. What he's saying is something like this. Look, when you live your life, be generous. Invest in a lot of things and a lot of people. And look, love you guys, but it's not just about your 401k or your IRA or your CD or whatever investments you have through whatever financial people. He's saying, no, live your life and invest. Invest into acts of charity. Don't hoard your goods. Spread them around. Be a blessing to other people. You know why? Because you have no clue what lies ahead. You don't really even know if you're going to make it through the day, right? Full disclosure, everybody, we don't know what the day holds. So be generous. Be generous. Look around you and see who you can invest in. It's not just your own investments, but investments in other people. Now, here's more common sense. Verse 3, look at this. And I can hear him saying it, 3 and 4. When the clouds are heavy, the rain comes down. And whether a tree falls north or south, it stays where it falls. Hey, guess what, gang? It might rain this week. It might not. That's the wisdom. A tree might fall on your property, and if it falls on your property, guess what? You get to cut it up and sell it for firewood. Or it may not. There's a randomness to life. There's certain things that are going to happen, they're not going to happen, but you don't have any control over them. And you just best wrap your brain around that idea. And then he says something that's really important. He says, look, farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant, right? We got some farmers here, people who grew up farming. And if they watch every cloud, they'll never harvest. And what he's simply saying by that is if you wait for life to be perfect, you wait for the details to line up in your life, you won't ever do anything, will you? No. So guys, listen. Think over things, study over things, plan things, do the best you can. But at some point, you just got to roll the dice and start living. You just got to start living. By the way, does any of you have this kind of homespun kind of wisdom free you up a little bit? It does me. It makes me less afraid of life. Now, let's read on. Then he goes on and says the next thing he'd like to make an observation about your life. Just as you cannot understand the path of the wind. How many of you can adequately predict 4 days from now which way the wind's going to be blowing? Probably not. I mean, maybe the science of it all, maybe they have a better idea than you do, but you can't ultimately understand it. And not only that, even though you be a physician, and even though you be a scientist, and even though you be the wisest man on the face of the earth, you'll still not fully understand the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb. You know, and there's certain things that you're never going to understand. And then Solomon lets one out of the bag that's really hard for us. He simply says, listen, you're not always going to understand the activity of God. You're not always going to figure it out. You're not always going to understand why things happen the way they do. And see, here's where I want you to understand something. Secular people throw their hands up and get rid of God and hate God because God doesn't make everything clear to them. It doesn't explain everything to them. And so, if I can't absolutely know everything about God, I just soon get rid of God. But Solomon says, no, wait a second. Here's what you need to understand. It's not always going to make perfectly good sense. How many of you believe the Bible says God is good? Yes. By His very character, He's good, isn't He? But here's one of the things I understand about God's goodness. I don't understand how He's good in all the situations all the time, but I know that He is. I don't see how goodness can come out of some situations, but I know that it does. And sometimes things that happened to me 20 years ago are just now making sense, right? And then there's some other things that have happened in the world that'll never make sense until you have full understanding in eternity. And we just acknowledge that. See, here's the truth. Life is like a scroll, and it unfolds little by little, and God is never going to tell you your entire future. He's going to say, go step by step. I'll tell you what I need from you today. And as the New Testament would say, what is He going to do? He's going to give you your daily bread. Right? God loves you, but He's not giving you a loaf of bread. He's giving you bread to go for this morning's meal. Years ago, one of the wisest pieces of wisdom I ever heard from anybody came from my mother. I was in my early 20s, and I was struggling trying to make decisions, and I was being so careful not to make mistakes that I was getting paralyzed. And my mom politely looked at me and said, Eric, love you, but I want to tell you straight up, God does not revelate on people's heads. And I went, what? And she said, Eric, if you're weighing the decision about whether you're going to buy a blue truck or a red truck, chances are God's not going to come down in a cloud and revelate and tell you, thus saith God, buy the blue one. No. You know what He's going to do? You're going to use sanctified common sense. You're going to do your research and talk to the guys at the dealership and get a decent price. And then you're going to just say, all right, I'll take that one. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, so what? Right? See, the reality of it is I don't always understand God. And so what do? I just make the most informed, Spirit-led decisions I can, and then just live. Look at verse 6. He reminds you of this very truth. Right on the heels of that. Plant your seed in the morning. Keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if profit will come from one activity or another. And maybe both of them will work out. So what is he saying? He's saying, look, just live, just work, just do what God's called you to do, and then trust me. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, okay, it didn't work. Have you guys been 100% successful at everything you've ever done? No. Now, in a few minutes, he's going to warn you about some things here, but, I got to move on. Here's one for you really quick, verse 7. Here's his next piece of wisdom. Light is sweet, and how pleasant it is to see a new day dawning. Let me give you a layman's translation for what he's trying to say. Life is good, and it's amazing, and it's a venture. It's adventurous. And how many of you are glad you got up today? How many of you are glad you saw another day? And how many of you are glad you woke up in your right mind? That is literally what he's saying. He's just saying, light is sweet. When you go to bed at night and it's dark and then you wake up the next morning and the light comes shining in, I can just see old Solomon. He's just sitting there, and Solomon's like going, whew, another day. Another day. And I've told you guys before, I walk outside sometimes early in the morning and smile and look to heaven and say, you're having a good day. Because it's so remarkable. It's amazing to see good days, isn't it? And life is amazing. At the same time, though, look what else he says. When people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of their life. But let them also remember there are going to be dark days, and everything still to come is meaningless. Listen, I don't need to tell you, but and this is funny. I don't need to tell you guys this, but you know what? You're going to get old. You're going to slow down. And I don't care how much Rogaine you use, and how much you exercise, and how much you diet, and how much plastic surgery you have. One day, you're going to slow down. You're going to get old. And if you live long enough, you're going to see a lot of crazy things happening in your life. But here's the point. Life is good. Life is amazing. But the other point of it is this life can have some very difficult days. And we just best understand that it's going to be good days and bad days. And as you get older, what do? You learn to just celebrate in the midst of all of them. And y'all remember when everything used to seem to be a matter of life and death? And now when stuff happens and you got a little older, you look at it and you just go, oh, well, don't mean nothing, does it? Doesn't mean a thing. Because you realize what's important in life. And that's what Solomon's trying to say. And then Solomon moves on again in verse 9. And here's what he says. Young people, it's wonderful to be young. Yeah, it sure is. How many of you like to be younger than you are right now? Maybe just a little younger. I don't want to go back because it was too hard to get to where I've gotten. But isn't it wonderful to be young? Yesterday I was at the ball game and I was sitting in the stadium, and it didn't really even, at the point, to be perfectly honest with you, even though we lost yesterday, it almost didn't matter, because I'm going to be honest with you. You know what I was doing while I was sitting there? I was looking around at all these young people. Hey, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there was a whole bunch of young people in Keenan Stadium yesterday, and they were having the time of their life. Right? Remember what Thoreau said? Youth is a gift wasted on the young. Those of us who are older know that. And what's interesting is can you remember back and can you think to yourself, how amazing was it to be alive when you were young? Oh, it's incredible. And let me just go ahead and say to everybody here who's a little younger than me, guys, listen, I'm telling you what, you better savor the season. It's remarkable to be young and be alive. It's the most optimistic time in your life. And you do anything, you got things out in front of you. And so what does he say? Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you want to do. Take it all in. Live life. Hey, guys, it's okay. It's okay to live. It's okay to enjoy your life. Enjoy it. It's this incredible thing that God's given us. But then he pumps the brakes really hard and he says this. I need you to understand something. Remember, you got to give an account to God for everything you do. Don't go wild. Don't go crazy. Don't do things you'll regret. Why? Because ultimately, God's going to bring about a judgment. And so what is he saying? Enjoy your life, especially when you're young. But I'll tell you this, you better play within the rules or life will bite you. And here's the truth, and those of us who are older know this. You can enjoy the daylights out of your life, but I'll tell you what, if you don't play within the rules, you're going to pile up a lot of baggage, right, older folks? And you're going to pile up a lot of pain and pile up a lot of regret and pile up a lot of scars and pile up a lot of terrible memories to go along with all the fun you had. And that luggage is going to be with you, and you're going to carry it with you. And so he reminds you, he says, look, enjoy this life, but understand something. You got to play by God's rules, because if you don't play by God's rules, ultimately, you're going to stand judgment. And God's going to, it's all going to pass by him. And then quickly, verse 10, I want you to see some moral wisdom. Are you ready? So refuse to worry. Listen, guys, don't live your life worrying. And you can't, and honestly, I got to tell you guys the truth. You cannot live life if you're running scared. So stop worrying. Stop worrying about things. By the way, you do know the statistic is true that 90% of the things you worry about never actually occur, right? Yeah. Live. Stop worrying. And then he says something else, and I want you to see it. And keep your body healthy. And it's a loaded phrase. And remember that youth with a whole life before you is meaningless. That phrase, keep your body healthy, is a loaded phrase because what he's saying is something like this. Take care of yourself physically. Take care of yourself spiritually. Take care of yourself mentally. Take care of your complete person. And I'm going to give you a layman's translation for this. Are you ready? Don't do dumb things that will hurt you. Is that good theology? Don't do dumb things that will hurt you. Don't do stupid things that will short-circuit the quality of your life. Don't make bad decisions, poor choices, immoral decisions. Don't do that kind of thing. Keep your total body healthy, because otherwise you're going to be damaged. And Tommy Nelson, I'm so indebted to Tommy Nelson for some of this stuff, because Tommy Nelson said it best. Your body is a freighter, and it carries the cargo of your life. So be smart. And youth with your whole life in front of you, understand one thing else. You're young right now, but life is fleeting. And by the way, how many of you think it's moving? It moves. It moves. So here's what we've learned then. We've learned if you're going to live life, get out there and live. Enjoy your life. Do things. Try things. Okay? Congratulations, the pastor told you to have a good time this week. He did. That's what Solomon would say. But let's understand something. We can't do things that'll hurt us. We can't do things that'll be poor decisions. We can't do things that'll short-circuit the success in our lives. And ultimately, we need to understand something. That the life that we've lived, God's going to bring it into judgment. Okay? Does that sound like pretty good life advice to you guys? So look around. That's the way he wants you to live. And then quickly he says this, I also want you to look up. And by that he simply means in chapter 12, I want to show you a couple of verses really quick from Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Don't let the excitement of your youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say life isn't pleasant anymore. Honor God. And what he's saying is that at some point, Solzhenitsyn was right. At some point in everybody's life, there's nowhere left to look but up. And so he's saying, look up, and here's what I want you to do. I want you to honor God with your life. You see, folks, I want to tell you this. The essential ingredient for happiness in your life is a vital relationship with God. Now listen to me. The secular world tells you this. The number one essential ingredient for happiness in your life is for you to take care of yourself and you to determine what's best for you and you make your happiness. That is so far from being biblically true that it's not even funny. The essential ingredient for happiness is to have a relationship with God. And I'm going to say this to you again. If everybody is so happy determining their own happiness in the secular world, how come everybody's so unhappy? Right? The essential ingredient for happiness is to honor God. God designed us to be empty without God. That's what Chuck Swindoll said, and he's right. The greatest decision of your life is that decision to know God personally through His Son, Jesus. And you say, why? Because when you live life without God, here's what's ultimately going to happen. You're going to get to a point in your life where you say, it's not fun to be alive anymore. I was reading recently a biography of one of the great comedians. Information about one of the great comedians. He took his life. Made everybody laugh, brought joy to everybody else, but couldn't find it in himself. Couldn't find healing in himself. Couldn't find health in himself. And here's what happened. And I felt so sorry as I read it, because he got to the point where life it wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't any pleasure in it. It wasn't pleasant. And apart from God, one of the worst feelings for any human being is when they get to that point where they say to themselves, my Lord, I've made all the money I need. I've tried all the things I've tried. I've been successful. Everybody likes me, but I'm not happy. And y'all know somebody like that. And you've seen people like that. So honor God. And then quickly, over in just a couple more verses, verse 8. This famous meaning, vanity of vanities, everything is meaningless, says a teacher, completely meaningless. Vanity of vanities, life is all empty. You know the reason Solomon kept saying that all the way through the book? It's because Solomon's whole point for saying that is whenever you live life without God at the center of your life is empty. It's meaningless. And I'll say it to you again, it's the reason why people are running around going crazy trying to fill the emptiness. Because it's all vanity. It's empty. And the only way to keep trying to fill the emptiness is by getting more of it or trying more of it. No, we have to honor God. And then finally, he simply finishes with the words that you all know from verses 13 through 14. This is the whole story. This is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commands. For this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, even if it's good or if it's bad. In other words, fear God. Do what God tells you to do, and remember that one day you're going to have to face God and give an account of yourself. And trust me, I want to say this to everybody who's hearing me. This is not an idea that secular people are willing to accept. No, 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 no. But Solomon says, no, one day you'll have to give an account of yourself. So live. Do what God tells you to do. Obey his commandments and understand that one day you got to face him. And so what's interesting is when Solomon finishes up how to live life, Solomon says, something like this. How many of you are ready to stand before your Creator? That's really what he's asking you to consider. Are you ready to stand before your Creator? And what Solomon would say is, okay, here's what you should do. You ought to start putting your life in order right now. And if you do that, guess what I'll do? I'll give you life. And I'll give you the best of life. And I'll give you a life that's meaningful. And I'll give you a life that has purpose. And I'll give you a life where you can actually do something that will last. And I'll give you a life, dare I say it, that's fun. Fun. And I unashamedly tell you, I'm having more fun now than I ever have. I'm having fun. Because I'm living the life that God designed for me. See, we have to believe fundamentally that if we'll put God first in our life, that God will give us his best. But the name of the game is to put him first. So what have I told you? And I'm done now. What have I told you, guys? You got to look around. You got to look up. You got to go out and live this week. You got to enjoy yourself. You got to try a few things. You got to work hard. You got to just do what God's put in front of you. Do it. But understand this. Don't do anything silly. Don't do anything dumb. Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything that'll hurt you, that'll cause you to live with regret and with pain and scarring. And above all else, remember, the key thing in life is to put God first. The key thing in life is to honor God. The key thing in life is to understand that one day I'll stand before him in judgment. So what I do tomorrow matters. Just out of curiosity, I'm finishing right now. How many of you, for any of you today, has that simplified life for you? How many of you think God made Solomon maybe the wisest person who ever lived? Yeah, I see so. I see so. So I just want to remind you this week, look around you and look up. Okay? In the months ahead, and maybe
not every time we gather, but from time to time, we're going to be looking a little bit more at how people are living their lives and thinking about how we need to be different. Okay?